Okay, hi friends, it's Grace and welcome back to another video. Today I am going to be doing a mid-year update on my r/fantasy Reddit bingo card. So if you're not familiar, r/fantasy is a subreddit on Reddit, and every year they will put out a thread about a bingo card that has like squares that basically have a prompt, and you are meant to, like, if you want to participate, basically read books to fill the prompts, and your goal is to get bingo or fill your card or whatever it is that your personal goal is. So I don't know if you can hear Maisie running around, but she definitely has zoomies right now. She's in a crazy mood. But anyway, there are 25 squares on the bingo card, and I just wanted to talk about how I'm doing with it because I haven't really been explicitly planning anything, but I've been reading, I think, a good variety of books this year, and so I just wanted to see how I've been doing and seeing like what books I can fit into where, and I'm actually doing quite well. So before I go through each of them, just to talk about my overall stats, currently I have read a book that can at least fit for 20 of the... I was very rudely interrupted. I've at least read a book that can count for 20 of the 25 squares, which, to be honest, is better than I thought that I was doing, and I'm really, really happy with that. And so among those 20 that I've completed, 7 of them are for the regular mode, and then 13 of them fit for the hard mode for the square. So with that being said, I'm gonna go through what they actually are. So the first square in the first row is an LGBTQ+ list book. So what this means is that on r/fantasy, they have a list collected of LGBTQ+ books, and this square specifies a book from that list, not just any book with that type of representation. And so the hard mode for this is a book on the list that got less than 10 votes. And I think that the intent with this hard mode is to get people reading the ones that are less popular to help them get more recognition. And so this is one square that I have not yet completed, but I do have plans for it, and both of these would fit for hard mode. So one of them is The Ninth Reign by Jen Williams, and then the other is A Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab. And so both of those would fit for that square, would fit for hard mode, and I just wanted to see what was on the list and have some books in mind so that I know that if I get to them, then I'll be able to check that square off. Then the second square is Weird Ecology. So unique environments, strange flora and fauna, etc. It has to be distinctly different from our world. And the hard mode is that this is not Jeff Vandermeer or China Miéville. I don't know how to say his name. And so for this one, I have used The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin because the weird ecology part of it doesn't actually specify that it can't be Earth. It just specifies that it needs to be distinctly different in some way, and the geology and some of the animal life and all of that stuff is definitely distinctly different in that series as a result of whatever has happened in order for it to be the broken Earth. So I definitely think that that one counts, and that's the one that I've currently used for Weird Ecology. Then next up we have the 2 or more authors square. So this is anything by 2 or more authors, and anthologies do count. And the hard mode for this is 3 or more authors. So the one that I've currently used is actually The Mask of Mirrors by M.A. Carrick, because M.A. Carrick is a pseudonym for Marie Brennan and Alice Helms. And even though I have read anthologies this year, I've actually read I think 3 short story collections. They've all just been by singular authors. I haven't read a true, I guess, anthology of short stories by multiple people. So I have not hit the 3+ authors as far as I can remember, unless I'm missing something. Nothing that I have read has been by more than 2 authors. However, like I said, The Mask of Mirrors does fit this one, just not for hard mode. Then next up, we have the square that is historical SFF, and this one is pretty self-explanatory. It is simply the historical subgenre. And the hard mode for this is that it is not Britain or Ireland. And so I have not completed this technically, but my planned book for this is She Who Became the Sun by Shelley Parker Chan, which will also fit hard mode. But I have that on my November TBR. I'm planning to read it for Once Upon a Readathon, so this one is like half checked off. Like, this is in my immediate plans. I should get it finished. I just haven't read it yet. Then the fifth square in the top row is Set in Space, and this is a book that takes place primarily off planet. And the hard mode is that the characters are not originally from Earth. And I don't actually have any books on my TBR that fit this. And so I thought that, like, there's always the possibility that I will pick something up that does like apply to this square. But what I did instead was I substituted a square from the 2021 bingo card, because you do have the option to do that once. And I looked at this card and thought that Set in Space is the one that I am by far the least likely to be able to find a book for. So instead I went with a new to you author, and the hard mode is that you didn't know really anything about the author's works or too much about them before you picked it up. So I used For the Wolf by Hannah Witten to fit for this, because For the Wolf was the first book that I had ever read by her, and while I had heard a little bit about the fact that this was a retelling, I really didn't know anything about her as an author, especially with this being, as far as I know, her first novel. So there really wasn't anything previous to it to know about her writing. And so this one fits for this square that I've chosen to substitute. Then we have the next square, which is a standalone book. And this simply means exactly what you would think, which is just that it is not part of a series or a larger world. And then the hard mode for this is that it is not on the r/fantasy list of favorite standalones. So they have this linked in their post what this list is, and as long as the book is not on there, then it counts for hard mode. And so the one that I am using, and it does count for hard mode, is Warrior of the Wild by Tricia Levenseller. I read this back in May. I actually read this when I had COVID, so I literally finished it in like either the same day or like just overnight. Like, I had a little bit left. Maybe I finished it in 2 days. I absolutely blew through it. It was a really, really fun read, and like, it was nice at that point to read it knowing that it was a standalone and that it was a very easy read. And I was pleasantly surprised to find that it was not on the r/fantasy list. That list, from what I could tell, is mostly adult. So I think that a YA choice is maybe a little bit safer for being able to hit the hard mode. Then next up for the next square is the anti-hero square, which simply means that the book features an anti-hero, and the hard mode for this is a YA book. And I have just used Before They Are Hanged by Joe Abercrombie for this, because it certainly includes anti-heroes, multiple of them arguably. It is most definitely not a YA book though, so this just counts for the square without being hard mode. Then next up we have Book Club or Read Along, which is basically just any past or active pick of a book club or a read along that r/fantasy has done at any point. And the hard mode is that you read the current selection and you actually participate in the discussion. And so, like, realistically, I knew that I was not going to do that. So I know that I was not going to hit hard mode for this square. All I had to do was figure out what a past pick for them is, and then that could fit. So the one that I went with was Kindred by Octavia E. Butler. I'm not exactly sure when that was like a book club pick for them, but it's on their Goodreads shelf, and I've read it since the bingo card started, so that's all I needed to know, and it fits the square. Then next up we have the Cool Weapon square, which is that the main character of the book uses a weapon with magical properties, and the hard mode for this is that the weapon has a cool name. And the book that I'm using for this, and it does fit hard mode, is A Memory of Light the final book in the Wheel of Time. And so I'm not going to say any more than that, because those who have read Wheel of Time will know that the main character uses a weapon that has a name. And I don't want to say, like, I don't even really want to say who I'm talking about or the weapon's name, because like that, any of those things could be spoilers. All you need to know, and you will know if you've read it, is that there's a weapon, it has a cool name, and someone uses it. So it fits the square. Then next up we have the Revolution or Rebellion square, which just means that the book has to feature one of those things. And the hard mode is that it's the main focus of the plot. So for this, I have used Babel by R.F. Kuang, and it does fit for hard mode. And I don't think that that is a spoiler, because that's basically the whole point of the synopsis of the book. But I still won't say more about it than that. I don't want to go into detail, because then it could be spoilers. But Babel definitely does have a strong component of that for its purpose of the plot. Next up is the name in the title square. So for this, the character's first name has to appear in the title. And the hard mode is that their first and last name appears in the title. And so the sad thing about this is that I have been reading the Finlay Donovan series this year. And so if this was just any book, that could fit. But this is specifically a speculative fiction bingo card. So no Finlay Donovan. However, I have read Circe, and so even though Circe is her only name, it's still just a first name rather than like a first and last name situation. So it doesn't fit for hard mode, but it does fit the square. Then next up we have the author uses initials square, which is just an author who uses initials somewhere in their name. So the hard mode for this is that the initials are a pseudonym. And so the book that I've chosen for this is What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher, because T. Kingfisher is a pseudonym, but it also is an initial. So it fits for hard mode. And another one that could fit for this is The Mask of Mirrors by M.A. Carrick, because M.A. Carrick is a pseudonym. However, it's also written by two people, so for me, it's better suited in the other square. But if you're someone who reads anthologies from multiple authors and you already have another book in the three authors square, then, you know, The Mask of Mirrors or any of the Rook and Rose books could definitely fit in the pseudonym / initials square. And I mean, like, a lot of people, like N.K. Jemisin, Ursula K. Le Guin, you know, you get it. Like, there are plenty of authors that use an initial somewhere in their name. But if you're looking to fit for hard mode, T. Kingfisher and M.A. Carrick are definitely good examples of that. Then next up we have the published in 2022 square, where the hard mode for that is that it's also a debut novel. So for this, another square that I have not yet completed but have definitive plans for. So The Book Eaters by Sunyi Dean will fit for this square, and once again it's on my November TBR. I'm going to read it for the Once Upon a Readathon, and I'm essentially reading it for exactly the same reason, like a debut novel, and so it will fit for this square for hard mode. So I will hopefully have that wrapped up and checked off very, very soon. Then next up we have the urban fantasy square, which is just fantasy using modern society as the setting. And in the like actual post itself, I believe they specify modern society as anywhere from the 19th century until now, just in case you're like looking for the criteria for yourself. But the one that I have been using for this is the Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sangu Mandana, and that is very modern. So it definitely fits in the urban setting, and it has witches, which is what makes it fantasy. And so this one is just a regular like square. It doesn't fit the hard mode, which is that the book has an LGBTQ+ point of view character. And so while the Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches does feature like characters that are on the like part of the community, but it doesn't actually have a point of view from them, so it doesn't fit for that. Then next up, we have the Set in Africa square, which basically just means that the book is set in Africa or in an analogous African-inspired fantasy setting. And then the hard mode is that the author is of African heritage. And so the one that I have down for this, like that I have not read, but that I know would work for it if I get to it, is The Rage of Dragons by Evan Winter, and it does fit for hard mode. And it definitely, like, it wasn't hard to find this information, but it says on Evan Winter's author profile that he was raised in Africa. And so that would definitely, and The Rage of Dragons, like, people have recommended it for this square. I obviously don't know the details of the setting because I haven't read it, but people definitely seem to agree that this is set in an analogous African-inspired world. Then next up we have the non-human protagonist square, where the protagonist must not be human or partially human. And the hard mode is that you have a non-humanoid main character. And so for this, I used Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree, where the main character is an orc, but in my opinion this doesn't fit for hard mode because I don't really know like what humanoid means precisely, like whether you could get away with calling some other creatures non-humanoid, but in my mind these characters, like, they speak English, they walk and talk, and they open coffee shops, so I'm pretty sure that counts as humanoid. But either way, it does fit the square because our protagonist is not human. And then the next square is Wibbly Wobbly Timey Wimey, which is a great name. And this is basically just books dealing with time not behaving as it should. And the hard mode is that there is no time travel. And so this is a very recent edition because I just finished it as the second to last book that I've read. And so the one that I'm using for this is Spinning Silver by Naomi Novik, because there are a race of like magical beings that can sort of bend time to their will if they so choose, or at least the more powerful of them can. And so it's not time travel, it's simply just making time behave strangely. And so Spinning Silver does fit hard mode for Wibbly Wobbly Timey Wimey. Then next up we have the 5 short stories square, which is, as I recall, a return from last year. I'm not sure, I only started doing it in 2021, so I'm not sure how long running the 5 short stories square has been, but it's basically any short story as long as there are 5 of them, and the hard mode is an entire anthology or collection. And so the book that I have in here is Exhalation by Ted Chiang, and it feels kind of crazy because it feels like I read Exhalation like a long time ago, but I didn't. I only read it earlier this year after the card came into effect. But either way, it does fit for hard mode because it is an entire collection of short stories by Ted Chiang. There are more than 5 of them. And that just feels really, really strange because I can't believe it's only been that long since I read it. Then next up is the mental health square, where the story takes a strong interest in or explores themes of mental illness or wellness. And then the hard mode for this is that the series or the book is not the Stormlight Archive and is also not on the list, which is provided on r/fantasy as suggestions of books that do this. And so the book that I have on here that also does work for hard mode is A Psalm for the Wild Built by Becky Chambers. It doesn't focus on mental illness so much as it focuses on mental wellness and the purpose of being a person and how to find I guess like meaning within your life. And it definitely focuses on like, I guess, mental like perturbations in your life and how to like explore yourself and sort of fix those and see like what you can do to go about getting yourself on a better path. So in my mind, it definitely focused on mental wellness. Then next up, we have the self-published or indie published square, and that's self-explanatory. And the hard mode for this is that it has less than 100 ratings on Goodreads. And I'll be honest with you, I am rarely, if ever, the first to know about a self-published book. I love to hear about them when other people are promoting them, and it's not to say that I don't try to promote them when I do hear about them, but I just am like, well, it's very rare to be the first 100 people to read a book. So I didn't think I was gonna hit hard mode for this one at all. However, an author's husband rather got in contact with me about whether I would be interested in reading this book called Second Star to the Right, which is a Peter Pan retelling. And I just actually recently reviewed this on Goodreads because I just recently read it, and it only has like, I think, 16 or 17 ratings, including mine. And so this one absolutely fits for hard mode. And it was a really cute, fun story. I haven't read Peter Pan and I haven't watched it since I was a kid. So it was a really nice, like, nostalgic type of feeling, and it was enjoyable. So if you're someone that likes fairy tale retellings, definitely go have a look out for that. Then next up, we have the award finalist square, which is for any book that was shortlisted for an award but never won. And so the hard mode is that it's neither Hugo or Nebula nominated. And for this one, I looked into other people's recommendations because, to be totally honest with you, I was too lazy to look up all of the award nominees. Like, I wasn't too lazy to look up award nominees, but there are so many awards that I'm just not aware of, and so I didn't feel like doing all the research to figure out which books had never won. And so what I ended up with, based on threads of other people's recommendations, was The City of Brass by S.A. Chakraborty. And so this is something that I have on my shelf, and even if I don't, like, I don't know, even if I end up getting to this later, it still surprises me that it's never won an award just because of how loved it seems to be on BookTube. However, I have not read it, but that is my tentative plan for the award finalist square. Then next up we have a Black, Indigenous, or person of color author. And so that is self-explanatory, and the hard mode for this is an Indigenous author. And I have read a few books by Indigenous authors in the past, but not since this bingo card time frame started. And the books that I have read by Indigenous authors since this have not been speculative fiction. They've been more in the just general fiction or non-fiction category. So I don't have a hard mode book for that, but I do have The Paper Menagerie by Ken Liu, because of course Ken Liu is a person of color. So that definitely works for that. And if I end up picking something up by an Indigenous author between now and the end of I think it's March that the deadline ends, we'll see what happens. Then the next one, and the third to last square, is Shapeshifters, a character with the ability to change their physical form. And the hard mode is that the person is not a wolf or a dog shifter. And I'm sure that that is the hard mode because of the prevalence of werewolf stories, which makes sense. It'd be a lot easier to find one of those than it would be some other options. But the one that I have used for this is A Wizard of Earthsea by Ursula K. Le Guin, and it does fit for hard mode because I don't remember exactly what type of bird. Is it a hawk? But regardless, the shape-shifting that takes place is not into wolf or dog form. So this one is a great unexpected treasure for that square because I didn't know that that was an aspect of the book when I picked it up. Then next up we have the no ifs, ands, or buts square. And this means that the title doesn't include the, a or an, and, or, if, of, or but. So that's pretty difficult when you think about it. And the hard mode is that the title of the book is 3 words or more, because it's not so hard to find a book that's only a one-word title or a two-word title that doesn't include any of those, but you start to get a little bit longer and it definitely becomes more difficult. So I did manage to get hard mode on this one, and that is for Mrs. Death, Mrs. Death by Selena Godin, which I love that title. That is half of the reason why I picked up the book in the first place. The other half was because Kayla from Books and Lala loved it, and the other half, because I can do math, is the cover. But yeah, that is a great title, and it does not have any ifs, ands, or buts. And then the very last square on the card is Family Matters, which is a book that features biological family ties, and the hard mode is that it's at least 3 generations of the same family. And so for this one, I technically could have used any of the Live Ship Traders books, but I used Ship of Magic for the hard mode for this one, because that's the first one that I read. Obviously, it's the first in the series, but yeah, I've read this entire series since the time frame for this bingo card started. So the Live Ship Traders, just in general, fits for Family Matters. And so yeah, to recap, I have read books already for 20 of the squares, which is way better than I thought that I was going to be doing. And I actually have, I believe, 3 bingos, because of the orientation of the squares on the card, but that should go up to like 5 bingos by the time November is over, because of the Book Eaters and She Who Became the Sun. Regardless though, I am so happy with my progress on this. It's a lot of fun when you realize that like what you've been reading actually does fit in the squares, because I'm not like planning ahead necessarily for this challenge, but I simultaneously want to be doing well without trying, which doesn't make any sense, but either way, very happy about it. So if you're doing this, let me know how you're doing on it, or let me know if you have any recommendations for me, or if you want any recommendations from me. If you are doing it and you're having trouble with one of the squares, I can try and help you out. But yeah, that is going to be it for this one. Now that we've chatted through that bingo card, I really hope that you liked this video. Please like if you did like it, subscribe if you want to see more content from me. I post new videos every Monday and Thursday, and as well I will have my Discord, socials, and Patreon linked in the description, as always, if you're interested in any of that stuff. And with that said, I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. Bye!